Okay, hi guys, it's Camus. It's been a long time since I did a Chess Beauty, but the online chess videos tournament sort of sapped my chess energy, and of course, family and work sapped the remaining energy. But I'm back and I'm bigger than ever. So at the end of Chess Beauty 36, we're presented with this problem: white to play and win. Okay, so take a look at it. Okay, so I don't expect you to have solved this one, mainly because I consider it practically insoluble for a normal human, uh, although not impossible. It's basically a mate, white to mate, and 59 moves. If you want to give it another try, knowing that, now's your chance. Okay, as I thought, you didn't try it, so and nor should you, because it's kind of a waste of time. um, I just thought this was an unusual position to have such a long solution, but it is a forced solution, and there is something we can learn from this position. Okay, basically, Troitsky years ago developed a lot of theory on knight uh, endings, and one of the things he discovered, actually may have discovered prior to his work in the area, was that two knights cannot mate a king. However, if black has an extra pawn, then a mate is possible. And this is what this position exploits. So we're going to jump ahead here because, as I said, it's a mate in 59. It's a long solution, and I don't want this video to be overly long. So we'll just go to one of the positions near the end so you can understand this position a little better. Okay, this is after 56 king to h8. We'll come back to this in a minute. After knight to f6, if you look at this position, you can see that if the pawn wasn't on f5, this would be a stalemate. Okay? And it's by the fact that this pawn is allowed to move that white can get in position for a checkmating mating net. So f4, knight to g5, f3, knight to f7 is checkmate. I also want to make another note here. If this pawn was any closer, if the pawn was in the beginning of this position, if the pawn was on, say, f6, excuse me, if the pawn was on f4, then it would not be possible for white to mate in the allotted time because due to another variation that we'll look at a little bit later, the black pawn could queen and disrupt white's plans. So let's go back to the start position. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And the winning move is king to e7. Okay, now we're going to go through this very quickly here because there's 59 moves to get through, but I'll make a few comments along the way. So g5, knight to f3, king to f5, knight to f6, g4, knight to h2, g3, knight to f3, king to f4, knight to h4, king to e3, knight to h5, king to f2, knight to f4, king to e3, knight h g2 check, king to f3. Now, what has to happen here is that white has to win one of the pawns, but keep the other one blockaded. Meanwhile, herding the black king into a corner near the blockading knight. It's a tall order, but it can be done. I used table basis to solve this. So the moves you're going to see represent best play for both black and white. And white can win in a minimum of 50 moves from this position given best black play. So we're going to go quickly here. King f6, king e4, king g5, f5, king h4, king f3, king h3, king f2, knight h4, g2. Now, white has to capture this pawn at this point, obviously. So now he wins it, and this knight on f4 is going to stay for most of the rest of the puzzle. Is required to blockade this pawn. Okay, so I'm not even going to call out the moves here. I'm just going to go cycle through the solution very quickly. I'm sure there are a lot of interesting pathways along the road, but we're just going to ignore them and get back to the final position. Black is going to make it as difficult as possible for white, naturally. I'm sure there would be some shorter wins if black made a mistake. Seems like white's just diddling around, but these moves have purpose, and they're gradually reducing the black king's options. We're making a little progress now. Black is essentially cut off from one side of the board. He can't escape, so he has to go back. Now we're making real progress here. We need the king to be on h8. He needs to be within range of the blockading knight for this to work. Okay, now we're at move 48, and one thing that's interesting to note is this is the very first point in the game that Rybka realizes this is a win for white. Up until now, Rybka thought that white had a small advantage or it was a draw. So only now, and we still have another 11 moves to go, does Rybka notice that it's white is actually winning here. Knight d6. Okay, and finally, white can release the blockade on the pawn. Not that the pawn can move. Well, if the pawn moves, let's see what happens if the pawn moves. Naturally, we can't take the pawn because it's an instant draw. So the main variation here is king to h7, but I was curious as to what would happen after f4, and this is what happens. We don't take the pawn. King to g6, f3, knight to e4, f2, knight to f6 check, king to h8, and we need this tempo. This is the stalemating tempo that would ordinarily be, excuse me, if it wasn't for this tempo here, it would ordinarily be stalemate. So knight to g5, we actually allow the pawn to queen, but he's one tempo too late, knight to f7. Okay, so that's what would happen on move 54 if black played f4. If instead he plays king to h7, which is the main line, although I actually kind of like the other line better, is actually more interesting. But knight to e8, king to g8, king to g6, king to h8, knight to f6. Now we've reached this position that I showed you at the beginning of the solution. This is where the pawn comes in handy for the tempi needed to reach the mating position. f4, knight g5, f3, knight f7 is checkmate. Okay, quite the solution. I probably won't do another puzzle like this. I thought this was pretty recondite, but it does have some kernels of wisdom to be gleaned from it, insofar as being careful not to allow black to liquidate all his pawns in a double knight ending. Not that this is all that common, but I believe I actually have achieved a double knight ending in one of my games at one point or another. It's pretty rare, but it does happen. So we'll go to more conventional studies and problems in the future chess beauties. Okay, now it's time for the preview portion of our show. I should mention this was a study by two gentlemen, Soukup and Bardon, and they created this in 1968. Okay, so we're going to go on to the preview, and this was submitted by Zeitnot Acrobat, one of our forum members, and he actually called my attention to this, said this is from a real game. This is from Young Sabos, I believe 1952, but I'm not positive. Anyway, it's white to play and win. And what would you do? This could be your game. How would you win this? This has all the elements of an interesting endgame study, but it is a real position. So I find this position challenging, but rewarding too. Good luck with it, and thanks to Zeitnot Acrobat, whose name means, I guess, time trouble magician or something like that. And thank you for submitting this. Anyone else is welcome to submit positions they think are interesting, and I'm happy to review them and include them. Um, anyway, take care. We'll see you on the next Chess Beauty. Thanks very much. Bye bye.